Terran stumbled as he ran across the low-gravity training hall, his boots sliding awkwardly over the polished metal floor. The other cadets glided past him with ease, their movements smooth, controlled, almost graceful. Each of them had spent years perfecting their skills before stepping foot in the Galactic Academy. But Terran had only 6 weeks. He wasn't just behind in skill, he was behind in instinct, in strength, in almost everything that mattered in this place. Kiera, one of the Academy's top instructors, watched him from above, leaning against the observation balcony with her arms crossed. Her expression held the slightest twitch of amusement, the kind that made others notice and laugh too. "Honestly," she muttered under her breath, "he'll never make it through the first simulation." Her words didn't go unnoticed. A few alien cadets exchanged smirks, and whispers filled the hall. Terran's boots skidded again, and he fell forward onto his hands. A soft thud echoed through the space. He scrambled to his feet, cheeks burning. "Careful, human," one of the taller cadets said, his voice tinged with mockery. "Gravity isn't going to change just for you." Terran gave a tight nod and tried again, forcing himself to focus. He wasn't going to let their laughter stop him. Every time he fell, he picked himself up, recalibrated his gear, and analyzed what had gone wrong. That was his method: observation, analysis, and adaptation. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't impressive at first glance. But it was methodical, and Terran had faith it would work. The training hall was massive, stretching for several kilometers in length, filled with holographic obstacles, simulated combat zones, and platforms that shifted at random. It was designed to test coordination, reflexes, and creativity under pressure. Most cadets rushed through it, relying on reflex and muscle memory. Terran, however, paused. He noted each shifting platform, each hazard, each pattern. Every stumble and failure added a note in his mental ledger, a piece of a puzzle that no one else seemed to notice. Kiera tapped her chin thoughtfully. "He studies too much," she muttered. "That will get him killed in a real mission." And yet, even as she said it, she couldn't look away. There was something in Terran's persistence, a quiet determination that stood out among the flashy confidence of the other cadets. Where others sought to dominate with strength, Terran relied on thinking, on patience, on small, careful adjustments. Hours passed. Terran moved slower than anyone else, but he learned faster. By the end of the day, he had memorized the shifting platforms, anticipated where the holographic traps would activate, and even predicted how the simulation drones would react to different approaches. He was still clumsy, still slower than the elite cadets, but he was learning at a rate that no one had expected. That evening, the cadets gathered in the common hall. Alien trainees shared stories of their successes, boasting of their scores and achievements. Terran sat quietly in the corner, sketching diagrams in a small notebook. The other cadets glanced at him occasionally, some with curiosity, most with doubt. "Why do you even bother?" one of them asked, an older human trainee who had been at the academy for a year. "You'll never keep up with them. Just accept it." Terran didn't respond immediately. He looked up from his notes and smiled faintly. "I'm not trying to keep up," he said. "I'm trying to see it differently." The words were simple, but they carried weight. The other trainee frowned, confused, and turned back to his food. No one else dared interrupt. The next morning brought the first real test for the cadets. A live simulation exercise against autonomous training drones designed to mimic aggressive alien predators. Kiera stood at the observation deck, ready to oversee the exercise. The drones were fast, adaptive, and relentless. Most cadets would rely on speed, strength, or aggressive tactics. Terran had other plans. As the exercise began, the cadets surged forward. Terran moved cautiously, taking note of the drone's patterns. He noticed small details that no one else seemed to register: the slight hesitation before a drone lunged, the rhythm of their attacks, the areas they avoided. While others ran in panic or overconfidence, Terran's movements were deliberate. He timed his steps, calculated his path, and avoided the drones with minimal effort. One drone lunged toward him, faster than he expected. Most cadets would have dodged instinctively, reacting without thought. Tehran paused for a fraction of a second, then sidestepped, allowing the drone's momentum to carry it past him. It was a small move, but it worked perfectly. Kiera's eyes narrowed. That was not the reaction of an inexperienced trainee. It was careful, intentional, and brilliant in its simplicity. By the end of the exercise, Tehran had not only survived, but he had helped several cadets avoid collisions and failures. He had predicted the drone's movements and directed his teammates, using their strengths to compensate for their weaknesses. It wasn't brute strength that won the day, it was observation, planning, and teamwork. After the exercise, the cadets gathered around, asking how he had done it. Tehran explained calmly, pointing out the drone's patterns, the predictable timing, and the subtle cues he had noticed. Some listened with genuine interest, while others shook their heads in disbelief. Kiera approached him, still skeptical. "You got lucky," she said, though her tone lacked its usual amusement. "The drones weren't even close to real threats. In a real mission, you wouldn't survive that long." Tehran looked at her, eyes steady. "Maybe," he said, "but I learned something from them. I learned their habits, and I learned how to avoid them. That counts for something." For the first time, Kiera didn't laugh. She simply watched him, trying to understand how someone so inexperienced could think so differently. Most cadets relied on what they had been taught, on instinct and force. Tehran relied on curiosity and persistence. That difference, subtle though it was, had created results that even she couldn't ignore. Over the following weeks, Tehran's reputation grew quietly. Cadets who once laughed at him began to take note of his methods. He didn't boast, didn't show off, and didn't seek approval. He simply observed, learned, and improved. Each time the other trainees underestimated him, he proved them wrong in small, almost imperceptible ways. Kiera still remained cautious. She had seen many talented trainees falter when overconfidence met real challenges. But Tehran's growth was undeniable. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the strongest. But he was adaptable, he was clever, and he refused to give up. One afternoon, during a particularly tricky navigation drill, Tehran's squad was tasked with moving through a simulated asteroid field filled with unpredictable obstacles. While others panicked, Tehran remained calm. He guided his team using small signals and careful timing, avoiding collisions and hazards that had tripped up even the most skilled cadets. By the end of the exercise, his team had not only survived, but performed better than any other group. Kiera finally approached him afterward, her expression unreadable. "You're not like the others," she said quietly. "You see things differently." Tehran smiled faintly. "I just pay attention." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Attention is good. Observation is better. But you'll need more than that to survive the real challenges ahead." Tehran nodded, accepting her words. He didn't need her approval. Not really. Every day was a lesson. Every obstacle a teacher, and no matter how many times others laughed, stumbled, or dismissed him, he knew that his path, slow, deliberate, and thoughtful, was working. As he lay in his quarters that night, reviewing his notes and analyzing the day's exercises, Tehran felt a quiet satisfaction. He wasn't the best. Not yet. But he was learning, adapting, and growing in ways no one else could see. One day, he thought, the galaxy would notice, and when that day came, it wouldn't be luck. It would be human determination, ingenuity, and the refusal to accept limits set by others. For now, though, he closed his notebook, staring out at the stars through the viewport. The distant planets shimmered like jewels against the black void. Somewhere out there, challenges awaited, bigger than any simulation, more complex than any drone or obstacle. And Tehran was ready to meet them, not because he was the strongest or the fastest, but because he was human, and humans had a way of surprising everyone. With that thought, he drifted to sleep, the soft hum of the training hall still echoing in his mind, and a quiet confidence settling in his chest. He would rise again tomorrow, stumble again, learn again, and one day, he knew, the galaxy would stop laughing at the trainee human. The sun of the distant star system cast long golden beams across the Academy's outdoor simulation grounds. Terran adjusted his visor and stepped onto the platform with his squad. Today was the first joint mission exercise, a full-scale simulation against the Apex Hunters, the Academy's most challenging holographic adversaries. Even the cadets who excelled in previous drills looked tense, their confidence tempered by the reputation of the Apex Hunters. Kiera observed from the command deck, her eyes following Terran with cautious interest. She had laughed at him once, but the human's steady progress could not be ignored. If anyone could surprise her, it might be him. Teams, ready for the Trellian Canyon simulation. The announcer's voice boomed across the platform. Survive the canyon, avoid ambushes, and reach the extraction point. Apex Hunters will adapt. You have 30 minutes. Begin. Immediately, the cadets sprinted into the simulated asteroid field. The terrain was jagged and unpredictable, shifting with programmed randomness. Holographic projections of the Apex Hunters flickered into existence. Six-legged predators with glowing eyes and sleek metallic scales. They moved with uncanny speed and precision, tracking the cadets' every motion. Terran's squadmates panicked almost immediately. One cadet darted straight into a narrow passage, triggering a trap that sent holographic spikes shooting from the walls. Another stumbled, barely dodging an approaching hunter. Chaos spread as the squad struggled to keep pace. Terran didn't panic. He took a deep breath and scanned the field. Each hunter moved with a pattern that was not entirely random. Their actions repeated in cycles, with slight variations that hinted at their next attack. Terran noticed these subtleties, how one hunter favored the left flank after a lunge, how another hesitated before a sudden dash. "Follow me," he called quietly to his squad. His voice was calm, almost soothing. Panic could make even the most skilled cadet fail, but Terran's calm carried authority. His squad hesitated, then nodded. He led them in a series of zigzags, taking routes that avoided the hunter's predicted strikes. When a hunter lunged, Terran's timing allowed them to dodge collectively, moving as one. The squad began to notice a pattern. While the other cadets rushed blindly, Terran anticipated the hunter's actions before they happened. Kiera furrowed her brows. She had trained countless cadets, but none had ever adapted to the Apex Hunters in real time. Most relied on speed or strength. Terran relied on thinking, watching, and predicting. His mind worked differently, but brilliantly. At one point, the squad encountered a narrow canyon passage. Two Apex Hunters blocked the way. The instinct of most cadets would be to attack or run directly. But Terran paused. He observed the hunters' movements for a few moments. Then, he pointed to a side path, almost invisible in the holographic terrain. "This way," he whispered. "We can use the shadows to distract them and slip past." The squad followed. Terran instructed them to move slowly, synchronizing their steps with the hunter's pacing. One hunter lunged, but Terran had already calculated the exact timing. The squad dodged effortlessly, and the hunter collided with the canyon wall before correcting itself. Terran smiled faintly. Small victories like these were proof of his method. By mid-simulation, the rest of the cadets had realized something extraordinary. Terran's squad, previously considered weak and inexperienced, was moving faster, safer, and more efficiently than any other group. While other teams struggled with mistakes and panic, Terran's team seemed almost untouchable. Kiera couldn't help but study him more closely. Each move Terran made was deliberate. Every risk was calculated. Unlike most cadets who relied on muscle and instinct, Terran relied on observation, adaptation, and patience, the traits that made humans unpredictable. Unpredictable, Kiera realized, was exactly what the Apex Hunters weren't programmed to handle. Suddenly, a large hunter appeared ahead, blocking their path completely. Its eyes glowed bright red, signaling an immediate attack. The squad froze. Most cadets would have panicked. Some would have rushed. Some would have frozen entirely. Terran studied the hunter carefully. He noticed a slight hesitation each time it shifted weight before lunging. He noticed the angle of its legs and how it moved in relation to the terrain. Then he instructed his team, "Move left. No. Wait. Now. On my mark. 2. 3. They followed his directions precisely. At the exact moment, the squad sidestepped the hunter's lunge. It passed right by them, unbalancing itself briefly. Tehran didn't celebrate. He merely kept moving, guiding his team. Every second mattered. Other cadets watched in awe. This was not luck. This was skill. This was the human way. Analyze, observe, adapt, survive. As they continued, Tehran's squad faced more complex challenges. Multiple hunters coordinated attacks, shifting positions as they adapted to the squad's movements. Most cadets would have panicked under such pressure. Tehran took a deep breath, observed the patterns, and made adjustments on the fly. He instructed his team to use minor obstacles as distractions, to split briefly to confuse the hunters, then regroup. Every maneuver was calculated, yet it seemed effortless. The simulation reached its climax in a massive arena where 5 apex hunters surrounded the squad. Most cadets would have seen defeat as inevitable. Tehran studied the hunters carefully. He noticed that each had a priority pattern. They tended to focus on the closest or fastest target first. Using this knowledge, he directed his squad to move unpredictably, but in coordinated ways. The hunters lunged, but each move was anticipated. One hunter collided with a holographic barrier. Another miscalculated a jump, and a third hesitated. Tehran's strategy worked perfectly. Instead of fighting the hunters, he made them work against their own programming. They could not adjust to human unpredictability, and for the first time, they hesitated, froze, and stopped advancing. Kiera's mouth fell open. She had never seen anything like this. A human cadet, 6 weeks in the academy. No previous combat experience had outsmarted the apex hunters, not with strength, not with speed, not with aggression, with intelligence, observation, and clever strategy. When the simulation ended, the announcement blared. Tehran's squad completed the exercise with 0 eliminations and maximum efficiency. Record-breaking performance. Record-breaking performance. The other cadets stared in disbelief. Some muttered, some shook their heads, and some even clapped quietly. Tehran simply adjusted his visor and nodded to his squad. They had done it together, and he valued their teamwork above all. Kiera descended from the observation deck, her expression unreadable. When she reached Tehran, she studied him closely. You did something no one else could," she said slowly. "Even the apex hunters. The best test we have." They hesitated. "They didn't advance." Tehran shrugged. "I just paid attention," he said softly. "I noticed patterns, anticipated their moves, and used what we had around us. I didn't fight them. I guided them." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Guided them. You turned the test into something else entirely. That is human ingenuity." Tehran smiled faintly, thinking of all the hours he had spent observing, learning, and recalibrating his approach. He hadn't needed to be the strongest or the fastest. He just needed to think differently, to see what others didn't. That was a human strength, and it had made all the difference. The other cadets approached him cautiously. "How did you?" one of them asked. "We couldn't even get halfway without being caught." Tehran explained simply. "You don't have to fight the challenge head-on. Sometimes, you just need to understand it, move with it, and guide it, instead of resisting. That's how we survive." By the end of the day, the academy buzzed with a new story. A human had outmaneuvered the apex hunters, the very creatures designed to challenge the best cadets. For weeks, Kiera had doubted him, had laughed at him even. But now, she understood. This human wasn't just surviving. He was excelling in a way that was uniquely human. That night, as Tehran reviewed the simulation logs in his quarters, He thought about the lessons he had learned. Each exercise was a teacher. Every mistake was an opportunity. Every obstacle was a puzzle waiting to be solved. He had not only survived, but he had changed how the Academy might view humans in the future. Outside his window, the stars sparkled against the endless black of space. Somewhere among them, real challenges awaited alien species, unknown environments, missions that would test every cadet to their limit. And Terran felt ready, not because he was the strongest or the fastest, but because he was human, and humans had a way of adapting in ways no one else could anticipate. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought of Kiera's words, human ingenuity. They weren't praise exactly, but they were recognition. And that was enough for him. The galaxy might underestimate humans now, but someday, it would not. And when that day came, humans would not just survive, they would shine. And for the first time since he had arrived at the Academy, Terran smiled without hesitation, feeling that small but steady spark of confidence that comes from proving yourself in a way no one else expected. The sun rose over the Academy grounds, casting long silver shadows across the canyon simulation field. Today was no ordinary drill. The final Apex Hunter exercise was about to begin a fully adaptive, real-time simulation designed to test the cadets' intelligence, strategy, and teamwork to their limits. It was said that only the most skilled and experienced cadets could survive this challenge. Most human trainees would not even attempt it. Tehran adjusted his visor and took a deep breath. His squad moved beside him, nervous but trusting him after the previous exercises. He could feel their unease. The Apex Hunters were unpredictable, smart, and relentless, but Terran had learned to see patterns where others saw chaos. He was ready. Teams, prepare for deployment. The announcer's voice echoed through the field. Apex Hunters are adaptive. They learn from your movements. Only the most observant and coordinated squads will succeed. 30 minutes until extraction. Begin. As the simulation started, the terrain shifted violently. Massive holographic rocks appeared from nowhere, creating narrow passages, false paths, and treacherous cliffs. The Apex Hunters materialized instantly, their sleek, metallic bodies moving with uncanny precision. They lunged, dodged, and tracked the cadets with near-perfect timing. Most teams panicked. Cadets ran in blind directions, collided with obstacles, or triggered traps. Screams of frustration echoed across the canyon field. Terran, however, moved deliberately. He didn't rush. He observed. He watched the hunters carefully, noting small details others ignored: the angle of a lunge, the slight delay before a sprint, the rhythm of their movement. They adapt, one cadet whispered nervously. Every time we try something, they counter it. Terran nodded. Exactly. But adaptation has limits. They react, but they can't anticipate something truly unpredictable. His team followed closely, trusting his calm. Terran instructed them to move in staggered formation, using the environment to their advantage. One hunter lunged at the nearest cadet. Terran had predicted it and directed the squad to shift positions just in time. The hunter overextended and collided with a simulated wall before regaining balance. Kiera watched from the command deck, her eyes narrowing. This was beyond what she expected. Terran's human intuition, combined with careful observation and strategic thinking, allowed him to react to the hunter's adaptive behaviors in ways no other cadet could. He didn't just respond to danger, he controlled it, guiding the simulation without the hunters even realizing it. As they moved deeper into the canyon, the challenges intensified. Multiple Apex Hunters coordinated attacks from different angles. Lasers flashed across the field, holographic predators leaped with lightning speed, and the terrain shifted beneath their feet. Every step was critical. Every miscalculation could spell failure. Terran paused briefly on a ledge, observing the hunters' patterns. He noticed a subtle rhythm every third move. They paused slightly before redirecting their focus. Most cadets would have ignored this tiny detail. But Tehran saw an opportunity. He directed his team to move just as the hunters paused, using that fraction of a second to cross an otherwise dangerous gap safely. The other cadets stared in amazement. How does he see that? One muttered. It's like he knows what they'll do before they do it. Taran didn't respond. He simply continued, leading the squad with quiet confidence. Each movement was precise. Each decision calculated. The apex hunters were powerful, adaptive, and relentless, but they could not anticipate a human mind that worked differently, that thought creatively, and that refused to act predictably. The climax of the simulation approached. A massive chamber opened ahead. The final arena. 5 apex hunters surrounded the squad, their red eyes glowing in unison. Most cadets would have frozen, paralyzed by the seeming inevitability of failure. Taran, however, studied them carefully. "Look at their positions," he whispered. "They focus on the nearest or fastest target. They react to what they see, not what we plan. We're going to use that." He directed his squad to spread out, each cadet taking a calculated position behind pillars and obstacles. The hunters lunged as expected, but Taran's plan worked flawlessly. The first hunter struck at a decoy cadet who had moved slightly ahead. The second miscalculated a jump. Landing in a holographic trap, the third hesitated, unsure which target to prioritize. Each movement was anticipated, each reaction predicted. Kiera held her breath. This was unprecedented. Never before had a cadet caused the apex hunters to hesitate, to pause, to lose their momentum entirely. Taran's human creativity, his ability to observe patterns and exploit small gaps, had turned the impossible into reality. Taran didn't allow himself to relax. He guided his squad through the final maneuvers, instructing them to shift, regroup, and move strategically. Every cadet moved as one unit, their coordination nearly flawless. It wasn't strength or speed that carried them, it was intelligence, teamwork, and trust in their human leader. Finally, the apex hunters stopped advancing. It wasn't brute force that had made them halt, it was clever strategy and the unpredictability of a human mind. They paused, frozen in their holographic forms, unable to respond to the moves they could not anticipate. The announcer's voice boomed across the field. "Simulation complete. Taran's squad has successfully navigated the final arena without eliminations. Record achieved." A stunned silence fell across the academy. Cadets who had doubted him, laughed at him, and dismissed him as weak, now stared with awe. Even Kiera was momentarily speechless, her mind racing to process what she had just witnessed. "You," she began, then paused, searching for words. "You did the impossible." The apex hunters, adaptive and relentless, backed down. "You made them stop." "How?" Taran adjusted his visor and smiled faintly. "I didn't fight them," he said calmly. "I observed, I learned, and I guided. I didn't react like everyone else. I anticipated, and we moved together." Kiera's expression softened. She had trained hundreds of cadets, but none had ever mastered the apex hunters like this. Most relied on instinct, muscle, and aggression. Taran relied on something different. Thought, observation, and creativity. The other cadets approached him slowly, their respect evident despite lingering disbelief. "We've never seen anything like that," one said quietly. "You didn't just survive. You controlled the simulation." Taran nodded, acknowledging their words. "It wasn't me alone," he said. "It was all of us. Teamwork matters. Observation matters. Thinking matters. That's what humans bring." That night, as Taran reviewed the simulation logs in his quarters, he reflected on the lessons learned. Each challenge had been a teacher. Every mistake he had made in the past exercises had prepared him for this moment. His ability to observe, adapt, and think creatively had turned what others considered weakness into a unique strength. Outside, the stars shimmered against the black void of space. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknown dangers, challenges, and opportunities. Taran felt ready, not because he was the strongest or fastest, but because he was human. Humans had a way of surprising everyone, of finding solutions where others saw none, of turning limitations into advantages. Kiera, meanwhile, returned to her quarters. her mind replaying the simulation repeatedly. She had doubted the human, laughed at him even, and yet he had achieved what no other cadet could. She realized, with a mixture of pride and humility, that she had underestimated the very essence of humanity: intelligence, creativity, and the courage to approach challenges differently. The next morning, word of Taran's achievement spread throughout the academy. Humans, once considered weak, were now being watched closely. Cadets who had once mocked him began to ask for advice, to observe his methods, to understand his thinking. Taran never boasted. He shared quietly, helping others see patterns and strategies they had overlooked. The story of the human who had made the apex hunters back down became legend, a tale whispered among cadets and instructors alike. It wasn't strength or speed that had won the day, it was human ingenuity, observation, and perseverance. Taran had shown that even in a galaxy full of advanced species and elite cadets, humans could excel in ways no one expected. That evening, Taran stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was full of challenges, far greater than any simulation. But he was ready. He had proven that careful thought, patience, and teamwork could overcome even the most adaptive threats. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy might underestimate humans now, but soon it would have no choice but to recognize their true potential. Humans were not the weakest species, they were clever, resourceful, and unpredictable. And those qualities, Taran knew, would take them further than anyone imagined. As the twin moons of the system rose into the sky, Taran allowed himself a small smile. The apex hunters had been the ultimate test, and he had passed. But the universe was vast, and the real challenges were still ahead. One day, the galaxy would stop laughing at humans entirely. And when that day came, humans would not just survive, they would shine. The Academy's halls were unusually quiet that morning. Word had spread about Taran's performance in the final Apex Hunter simulation. Cadets whispered as he walked past, some with awe, some with hesitation, and a few with disbelief. Humans had never been considered among the elite, never trusted with real responsibility. And yet here was Taran, a trainee just weeks into the academy, who had outsmarted the galaxy's most advanced training system. Kiera watched him from the observation balcony, her expression unreadable. She had laughed at him once, underestimating his resolve, his mind, and his ability to see the world differently. Now, she could no longer deny it. This human was extraordinary. Today, we hold a debrief. The announcer's voice echoed across the main hall. All cadets will attend. The room filled quickly with eager cadets, instructors, and observers from other teams. Everyone wanted to hear what had happened and understand how a human trainee had accomplished what no one else had managed. Taran's squad took their seats quietly, not drawing attention to themselves, while others whispered about the human genius who had bested the apex hunters. Kiera stepped forward. "Taran," she said, her tone measured. "Stand at the front, please." Taran rose calmly and walked forward. There was a murmur among the crowd, a mixture of curiosity and respect. He was nervous, as any cadet might be, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. This was not arrogance, it was awareness. He knew what he had accomplished, and he knew it was only the beginning. Today, Kiera continued, we witnessed something unprecedented. A human trainee completed the Apex Hunter simulation with 0 eliminations, outsmarting creatures that have challenged our most skilled cadets for decades. This is an achievement worthy of attention. The cadets around him exchanged glances. Whispers turned to murmurs of amazement. Taran remained composed, listening carefully. He had no desire to boast. He simply wanted to share what he had learned. Kiera gestured to him. "Explain your approach." Taran stepped forward. "I didn't fight the apex hunters head-on. I studied their patterns, noticed small details that others overlooked, and guided my team in a coordinated way. We moved together, predicted their reactions, and used the environment to our advantage. Strength and speed are valuable, but careful observation and teamwork are equally important. That's how we succeeded." A hush fell over the crowd. For many cadets, this was a revelation. They had relied on instinct, on power, on training that emphasized speed and reflexes. Terran had shown them something new. The power of intelligence, strategy, and adaptability. One of the cadets, a young alien with shimmering scales, spoke up. "So, it wasn't luck?" Terran shook his head. "No. It was preparation, attention, and teamwork. We learned from every step, every attempt, every mistake. That's what made the difference." Kiera looked at him with new understanding. "You have changed the way we think about training and strategy. Your methods are human, and that is your strength. Humans are unpredictable, adaptable, and creative. That makes them formidable in ways other species may not be." Terran nodded. "I just tried to do what felt right and logical. Observation and thinking are tools that everyone can use. I didn't assume I couldn't succeed because I was human. I just worked differently." The crowd erupted in applause. Cadets who had once doubted him now looked at him with respect. Some even with admiration. For the first time, humans in the academy were not the weakest trainees. They were learners, thinkers, and innovators. Tehran's example had shown that. After the debrief, Terran's squad gathered outside. They were smiling, talking quietly among themselves, proud of what they had accomplished. One cadet, who had been skeptical at first, approached him. You really changed the game. I never thought a human could do that. How did you stay so calm?" Terran smiled. "I focused on what I could control. Panic doesn't help. Observation does. Adaptation does. Thinking matters more than rushing." The cadet nodded slowly, beginning to understand. Tehran had not just won a simulation, he had taught them a new way of approaching challenges. Later that evening, Terran found Kiera in the training yard. She was alone, staring at the horizon where the twin suns of the system were setting. He approached quietly. "You know," she said without looking at him, "I laughed at you when you first arrived. I thought you were weak, clumsy, and inexperienced. I was wrong." Terran shrugged. "It's okay. Most cadets think the same way at first. I'm used to it." Kiera turned to face him, her eyes serious. "No. You're different. You're human, and that is exactly why you succeeded. Your strength isn't muscle. It isn't instinct. It's creativity, intelligence, and the way you think beyond what seems possible. You've earned respect, Tehran." He smiled faintly. "Thank you, Kiera. I just didn't give up. I tried to see things differently." She nodded, a small smile forming. "And that makes all the difference. Perhaps the galaxy needs more of your kind humans, who refuse to be limited by what others think is impossible." Terran felt a quiet pride, but also humility. He knew the journey was far from over. This was a beginning, not an end. There would be more simulations, more challenges, and more opportunities to test what humans could do. But for the first time, he saw that perception could change, that respect could be earned, and that humans could rise above expectations. The following days were filled with new exercises, but everything had changed. Instructors now watched humans more closely. Cadets listened to Terran's insights, and whispers of admiration replaced the laughter that had once greeted him. Terran continued to observe, to learn, and to teach in subtle ways. He shared strategies quietly, helped teammates understand patterns, and encouraged them to see challenges differently. He never sought the spotlight, but it followed him nonetheless. One afternoon, during a low-gravity navigation drill, a group of cadets struggled to cross a simulated canyon filled with shifting platforms. They panicked, unsure of how to move safely. Terran stepped forward calmly. He guided them, pointing out the timing of each leap, the best angles to land, and how to support each other. By the end, the cadets had crossed safely. Not because they were the fastest or strongest, but because they followed a strategy that emphasized thinking and coordination. Kiera watched from above, shaking her head in amazement. The human trainee she had once laughed at was not only surviving, he was shaping the Academy's approach to training. His methods, his patience, and his ingenuity had left a mark that no simulation could erase. That evening, Terran stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, full of planets, civilizations, and mysteries. He thought of the challenges yet to come, of missions that would require creativity, courage, and ingenuity. Humans had potential that no one had fully understood, and he was determined to explore it. He remembered Kiera's words, "Your strength is creativity and intelligence." They resonated deeply within him. That strength, subtle yet powerful, had allowed him to succeed where others might fail. And it was not just personal, it was human. The next morning, the Academy held a ceremony to honor Tehran's achievement. Cadets and instructors gathered, and for the first time, a human was formally recognized for exceptional skill, in a way usually reserved for elite, experienced species. Kiera presented him with a commendation, her expression proud. "This recognition is for more than just completing a simulation," she said. "It is for demonstrating the power of human ingenuity, the value of careful observation, and the strength that comes from teamwork and persistence. Humans are capable of extraordinary things. As Terran has shown us." Terran accepted the commendation quietly, nodding to Kiera. The applause that followed was warm and genuine. Cadets who had once doubted him now looked to him as a model of strategy and intelligence. It was not the loudest, flashiest display that won respect. It was thoughtful, deliberate action that earned it. As the crowd dispersed, Terran walked among his fellow cadets, exchanging quiet smiles and advice. He was no longer just a trainee. He had become an example, a symbol of human potential. The galaxy might still underestimate humans in many ways, but now, thanks to his persistence, observation, and ingenuity, they could not deny them. Later, Kiera approached him one last time that day. "You've done more than succeed in a simulation," she said. "You've changed minds, opened possibilities, and reminded everyone why humans are remarkable. Don't forget this, Tehran. The galaxy will need humans like you." Tehran looked at the stars again, a calm determination in his eyes. "I won't forget, and neither will they," he replied. "Humans have a way of surprising the galaxy. We adapt, we learn, and we never give up. That's what makes us, us." With that, Terran turned and walked toward the horizon. The sun's light reflected off the Academy's towers, casting a golden glow over the grounds. He had proven himself, earned respect, and shown that humans could achieve the impossible, not through force, but through ingenuity, patience, and teamwork. The galaxy was vast, challenges awaited, and adventures were still to come. But one thing was certain. The trainee human, once laughed at, had left an indelible mark. Humans would no longer be underestimated. They were clever, resourceful, and capable of feats no one had imagined. And as Terran gazed at the stars, he smiled. This was just the beginning. The universe had much to see, and humans were ready to show what they could do. The apex hunters were only the first challenge, and he had already proven that humans could not only survive, they could shine.